Welcome to the Executives Lounge. This is your podcast host, Christine Fauner. I am bringing you amazing stories from amazing women in leadership from across the globe. Let's get started. I'm here today, everyone, with Lisa Anderson. She's coming to us from the DC metro area. There's a few coffee shops I love to hang out at out that way. And man, oh man, is there so much going on in the DC area. Lisa is the chief HR officer of a technology company, and she is the president of Positively in Pursuit. She's a leadership and career coach, and she's had 25 years of HR experience. I bet she has some stories about weird behaviors that have happened. Her coaching business, Positively in Pursuit, focuses on women in leadership and assists them in finding their leadership voice, building their leadership courage, and increasing their leadership and executive presence. She uses her HR and coaching experience to help women propel themselves into the next level of their careers. And she has a book. Her book is entitled Invisible Professional to Influential Leader, which is a tip book for women leaders who want to lead confidently and authentically. Lisa, man, oh man, I know this speaks directly and resonates deeply with our listeners. We have built an amazing women's community here at Roam Your Soul and the Executives Lounge in ways that really help lift women up into their own leadership space. And so, man, I just can't wait to talk to you about this. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much. I am super excited to be here.
Yes. Well, first and foremost, we really geeked out together on our passion for supporting women in leadership, especially in executive spaces. And then we started getting really excited and heated and opinionated about why that's so important. And I don't need to explain that to the listeners of this show. We know why advocating for women in leadership is so important, but I'd love to hear it from your perspective. What made you say women need the support? I'm going in that direction.
Oh, absolutely. It's because of my own personal journey of climbing the corporate ladder. And I went through, just like a lot of other women, I went through so many different experiences. And now that I'm in the C-suite as a chief HR officer, I'm like, you know what? When I was going through my journey, I felt alone. I felt isolated. At that time, I couldn't trust people in the organization. I didn't trust. And I just felt alone. And now that I'm in the seat that I'm in, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to help the next lady, to help the next woman who may be feeling the exact same way I felt. I want to be there for her, to support her, because I know how I felt when I was going through it.
You know, based on some of my PhD research and some of my PhD work in toxic leadership and really focusing on the impacts of women in leadership, how did you handle there's this storyline that I've heard many times where women had to fight, struggle, claw their way up there. And now they're not necessarily open to lifting women up behind them.
Yeah, the way I've seen it, and just in my experience, we have some women that have clawed their way to the top and are literally exhausted. And to be frank and transparent about it, because of their experience of what they went through to get to the top, some women don't want other women to go through the same thing. So they disengage, right? So, and it really we talked about this, it really depends on that culture too, right? It's the culture set up for women to be successful in those top roles. And then I've had the experience where women have seen what I've gone through, and like, Lisa, I'm not interested.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like,
It's
boy,
exhausting. Yeah. It's
yeah,
doubly exhausting because we're really surviving in a patriarchal system that was never built for us. We're trying to shove our way into rooms that were never given to us an invitation. I'm wondering, how do we move from survive to thrive when we've had to learn how to survive in these male-dominated spaces with these double standards of being too direct, too domineering, too bitchy, too whatever?
yeah.
How do we move from survive to thrive?
Well, and look, the way I've moved to survive, from survive to thrive, is if the culture doesn't support who I am authentically, then that's not the culture for me. And I am very unapologetic about leaving. Because if
Yeah,
it,
we talked about this a little bit when we met.
Yep.
that, you talk a lot about having an exit strategy.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's scary though.
It is scary, but I've encountered so many women that are in these environments where it's not supporting them, and they will stay to the detriment of their mental health. And that's an issue because my whole thing is if it's a detriment to your mental health, it's not worth it. And I get it. We all have, bills to pay, we have responsibilities, we have families, and a lot of us can't leave an organization without another position. So my question is, what is your exit strategy to get out while you're still working in that toxic environment? So guess what? Your priorities are going to shift, and the goal is to get out
Yeah.
now.
Well, and again, if we can learn to tear down the barriers, breathe in the discomfort of fear and learn how to truly trust and support each other as women in the workplace, I think it would feel less scary.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because again, when you're in it, a lot of times, if you were like me, when I was in it, I felt alone. And so I didn't reach out, finally it got to a space where I felt comfortable to reach out to one of my mentors that was external. She was outside of the company because again, I didn't trust anyone inside. And she was able to at least get me to that point where I could shift and show up, as my authentic self. But it was scary going through that. And look, I was at the vice president level at that time. So it was very interesting for me because I was bold and courageous in my early career moving up the ladder. And then once I got to the vice president level, that's when I lost my voice. And I lost my voice specifically in meetings. So I had just got newly promoted into a VP role, into a new division. I didn't know the leadership. I had not built credibility. I had not built the relationships with my key, colleagues and my boss. And so I got in this new division and I was like, oh boy. And then I just started showing up in meetings quiet even though I
Mm,
had value to add, I had things to contribute to those business meetings, but in my head, I was having meetings, but nothing was coming out of my mouth. And
right.
that was scary for me because I had never shown up that way. And
Well,
I'm
your
like,
identity to that point was loud and proud to get you into that kind of role, I would guess.
absolutely. I had a leadership brand. My brand was strong for me to get promoted. And so, and it was in the same organization, right? So I'm in the organization and I get promoted inside the same organization to a new division. So the leaders had heard about me. And so I get in the room and now I'm a different person. And so they were looking
Right.
confused. I'm confused. And so, I started showing up meeting after meeting, not contributing, not saying anything.
What was the root cause of that?
The root,
Like you walked into a room and you sat down and you said, I can't speak.
yeah. So now that I'm on the other side of it, when I look back, right? When I'm in it, I didn't understand it, but now I can look back. But when I look back, I'm like, wow, I'm sitting in the room feeling invisible. It's almost like the imposter syndrome came in. Like, do you really belong? Now you got this VP title. Do you
Hmm.
really belong? And now these people are new, new to
Right.
you, and you don't know them. They don't know you. They only know what they've heard about you. So I had to really shake myself out of that because the way I've been successful is building relationships and credibility. And I was like, okay, Lisa, you're going to have to, snap out of this and do your thing. And slowly started to show them, hey, this is why I'm in the room, my HR knowledge. That's the way I was able to like shift. But it was scary because for a while my colleagues were confused and they were like, well, if she don't have nothing to say in these meetings, they started to ignore me.
We have voice, and our voice is what creates these stories of ourselves. And I always say we have to own our own narrative, or other people will tell our stories for us.
Yes.
But I also think if you say nothing other people will start telling your story also. And that story can become, you don't have one.
I have a lot of clarity around this now. Back then, I didn't have clarity, but one of my top values is connection.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in a room, quiet, not connecting with anyone in the room. I'm very uncomfortable, don't know why I'm uncomfortable. And so I went through that. And that's why even today now I do a lot of values work with the
Yeah.
women that I work with.
I always say your core values are always at play, always. Whether they're aligned to your actions and your words or not, they're always in play.
Absolutely. And so why was I so uncomfortable? Well, guess what? I'm violating one of my top values. Sitting
Mm-hmm.
in a meeting, quiet, not connecting with anyone in the room. And that was an eye
Yeah.
opener for me once I got the clarity. Once you get the clarity on those values, then you start to rewind the movies and like, so wonder I was so uncomfortable in this role. Oh, no wonder I was so uncomfortable in this situation. I wasn't honoring like my top values.
Yeah. Yeah. Only 25% of women are in C-suite. And then, I mean, as a woman of color, that's even
Yes. Even lower.
lower.
Yes.
I can't imagine that didn't have impact on you from, ambitious 20s to, executive level in a boardroom.
Yes, in my career, I have been the only female in the room because I'm in the technology sector. And so, it is very male dominated. We're trying to change that, but it's still male dominated. And so I have been in rooms where I've been the only female, and I've been in rooms where I'm the only person of color in the room. And so you're absolutely right, Christine. That comes with a whole different dynamic, as I'm sitting in these rooms, right? And so I really went through this period of like, what is your voice? And, leadership courage. Like everybody in that room is saying it's red, and I'm the only one in the room said, no, it's blue. And I went through like, okay, are you going to put your blue position on the table? Or are you going to let everybody just continue with red? Now, at the end of the day, the decision may still be red, but you have not hurt my blue position.
Right.
And
Right.
now, once I found my voice, I'm like, okay, I am going to put my blue position on the table because at least we need the blue option out there so we can, brainstorm that around. The decision at the end of the day may still be red. And, there's a reason for that. But at least you've heard my blue position. And so now, I'm seasoned in my career. I have no problem saying,
That's
like,
blue.
it's blue. Why can't y'all see it's blue?
How many times have we sat in a room and been like, am I taking crazy pills? Am I the only one? Am I the only one seeing this?
And look, my famous saying is, am I in the Twilight Zone? Like, is anybody else seeing what I'm seeing? And so, but a lot of women are not comfortable
Right.
putting the opposite because it's a fear. It's the fear of judgment. It's the fear of, oh, I'm not in the majority. I'm in the minority. So we go through, oh, if I say it against, Johnny, is Johnny gonna, be resentful because I went against his idea? I mean, like all of those things go through our head when we're sitting in these rooms and like, is it psychologically safe for me to put a different position on the table? Like we have to assess all that. And if we don't feel safe, we're gonna let them keep thinking it's red. And
Right.
I'm gonna leave the meeting with my blue because it's not safe for me to put that position on the table. So culture is really a big piece of this, and who you're comfortable with, who brings you in because of your ideas. And I coach a lot of women You have to know what kind of environment you're walking in and ask those questions in the interview. They might not have to
Absolutely.
say it outright, but what are they not saying?
I think too, shifting the cultural belief system around, you're not doing me a favor by hiring me. We are interviewing each other for whether or not this is a good fit for both of us. And I think for so long, we have really believed this paradigm that companies are doing us favors by hiring us.
You know what, Christine, I want them to screen me out. If I'm asking questions and they're looking like, oh, we don't do that, or that's not, please screen me out because you're going to save me the
Right.
heartache of me getting in there, being frustrated. Things are not aligned and it's not an environment I can thrive in. But here's the other key. You have to understand what environments you thrive in. And a lot of us women, as I'm working with my clients, sometimes they don't understand what environments that they thrive in.
Does the place that you go to every day to show up and do the work align to who you are and your core values?
Absolutely. And sometimes the culture is totally opposite. So if you thrive off being creative and innovation, and you get into a culture that is not that, oh boy, that is very difficult, uncomfortable, frustrating. If you thrive in an entrepreneurial spirit, they love you to bring the new ideas in. And if they like, we just want to do it the way we've always been doing it. How frustrating is that for the person who thrives in an entrepreneur environment? So that's the key is once you get clarity on what what environments you thrive in, then you start asking the questions in the interview. Like, I thrive with creative environments. How do you reward people for creativity? What's your process? How do people bring new ideas to the table? Do you have a process for that? And when they start, well, no, well,
I
okay.
sometimes wonder if good leadership is just getting to where you can ask the right questions to be able to explore the right directions, right?
Yeah. And that's where my passion comes in because I've been in HR 25 years. Absolutely. You can ask them questions just as much as they're interviewing you. But here's the kind of questions you want to make sure you get clarity on before you accept the offer, before you resign from your current job. And I get it. You might be running or trying to get out of that toxic environment, but let's not jump out one frying pan and go right
Right
to the
into the other.
next one.
If you experience toxicity in the workplace, which I mean, 80% of people have or are, it takes 3 to 5 years to recover and heal from that. So if you're jumping
Yes.
from one toxic culture to the next, I mean, that's decades of
a-
trauma.
And right. And we take that trauma. Now we're in workplace B, and there's a different kind of trauma going on. And then we're still recovering, trying to recover from trauma from workplace A, and it's just piling on in workplace B. And again, it's just not worth our mental health because that's when you get to the point where you're just like victim to it all and you can't see a way out. So I'm like, absolutely, please get help with your exit strategy. And
Right.
while you're working there, you got your strategy going, whether it is that resume updated, you're making key connections, lighten up your network, like you're doing all the things. You go to the toxic work environment, okay, I'll give you 8 hours or whatever it is, but that's all you're going to get because
Yep.
you're not treating me well, right? You're going to get the minimum because all my energy is now going here to
Yep.
get out as quick
Well, and
as
I
I
think that's a
can.
good point too about where we spend our time and our voice in telling our stories during stressful, toxic environment situations. I have a 3-5-7 rule that's based off of kind of your physiological response to toxicity. And basically what it says is, after 3 minutes of complaining, you start internalizing. And so by 5 minutes, you've internalized what you're experiencing as trauma. And then at 7 minutes, whoever you're talking to is also
Mhm.
feeling that and also internalizing that. And so I think about, when you have an exit strategy, you're not giving space and time to that toxicity anymore. And you're saying, no, I'm not going to internalize that. I'm going to move over here and start putting that energy into something more positive that can get me somewhere.
Yeah, having the exit strategy, knowing that you're strategically and intentionally working on getting out will kinda even help you endure this because you know this is only temporary. I had a huge fear of failure when it came to starting a business, and I had a coach challenge me on that and say, "Well, Lisa, you've had so much success in your corporate life. Why don't you think you would be successful with your business?"
Well, hiding behind somebody else's brand is so much easier than standing out there on the stage with your own. Entrepreneurialism is not for the faint of heart, especially when it's for you.
You, exactly. But here's the other thing. She said, "Well, have you always been successful in your corporate life?" And I said, "Absolutely not." She said, "Well, what happened? What happened? What did you do when you failed? Everything didn't go perfect. What did you do when you failed?" And I had to really think that through. I said, "Oh, yeah, I've had a lot of failures and lessons learned because I call them lessons learned, right? I always pick myself up, dust myself off, and keep it moving forward."
Yep.
And she's like, "But why you can't do that with your coaching business?"
Yeah, it's a little more vulnerable space, isn't it? But once you
It
figure
is.
that out, you're like, of course I can double down and do this. Of course I
Ex
can.
exactly. So, but again, where we sometimes are afraid to fail, you know what? It's gonna happen. If you living, you're gonna have some failures. It's all about how you react to these failures, right? And if you
Right.
can get to that space mentally where you can fail forward, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep going. Now, I don't condone you staying in a toxic work environment and letting people just, dump all over you. Absolutely not. And that's why I am a proponent of get strategic, get intentional, and get out.
I read a statistic the other day in some of the articles I was reading for my PhD work that 85% of all of those in people leadership positions kind of fell into that position, right? I'm a really good individual contributor. I'm really good at my job. I'm really a go-getter. Somebody left and I took their position, or somebody got promoted and now I'm promoted. 85% of people leaders have had no real training or support in how to support and lead other people.
And a lot of organizations have dual career ladders. So, where the person that is technical or a subject matter expert can still move up without leading people. Because what happens is a disaster when we take the person, the subject matter expert that does not have an interest in leading people, want to really stay technical, really want to stay in the SME role. But the only way they can move up is to cross over into management.
Right.
Because they want to move up, they just don't want to manage people. We force them over into the management track, and then we wonder why they're like dead bodies across the organization.
Right.
Like, what are
Right.
we
Well, and
doing?
I had a colleague once that called it the jungle gym instead of the ladder. Why can't we give people a jungle gym? You can go over there, you can go over here, you can flip around, go the other way.
Yes.
And there's
Yes.
no penalization. There's no up or down. It's continuous growth in different ways to continue your expertise.
I love that because you're absolutely right. And the other thing that, I'm big with my leaders is, are you having career conversations with your employees? Because we're promoting the person thinking we're doing a good thing, and we have no idea that that person has no aspiration to go
Right.
and manage people.
As human beings, we tend to avoid uncomfortable. We are so fear averse,
And conflict
conflict
avoiders.
averse.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
I want to take a few minutes and I want to talk about your book. Tell us
Yes.
about your book.
Yes, so Invisible Professional to Influential Leader is a tip book for women, but even though men have bought the book, it's a tip book and it's 25 tips and two bonus tips. Each tip has an action and a reflection. So it is a workbook. And I share all the HR, like, when I was in my career and I said, oh my goodness, I'm gonna write a book on that. All those stories are in the book.
Ooh, see?
And I want somebody to learn from the story, right? Because a lot of the story is about what I went through and how I was thinking. I want other women to know, like, this happened to me and this was the outcome. So it is. Some people said, Lisa, the book is really real. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is
Did you
real.
find that it was hard to go into those truth spaces, or did once you settled into them, you're like, no, I need to say these?
You have all this stuff inside of you, and as I was writing I was like, oh, and then this happened. Like, it was therapeutic, me just getting it out. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize how many stories I had. I want to put it out there real, so the next person who may go through something similar, just know your reaction to that is not weird. It validates that, you know what? It's okay that you had a reaction. I had a similar situation, and absolutely I had a reaction.
We want to make sure that you get all the resources, including the freebie trio. And also, Lisa has a YouTube series called Pulling Back the Curtain, which is about having an exit strategy if you are in a toxic workplace. So we will have all those links for you in the description of this podcast episode. Lisa, I am incredibly grateful for your expertise, time, knowledge, wisdom. Thank you for sharing it with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Christine.
Thanks for joining us today in the Executives Lounge, where we bust open the doors, slam through the ceilings, and make sure that we have a spot at the table and that we are the lounge. You can find more podcast recordings and episodes at www.roamyoursoul.com. That's ROAM, roaming the world, finding amazing stories from amazing women, sharing their leadership skills and talents with us all over the globe.